When I got the call asking if I would present this morning, there were two subjects that jumped out, two subjects which, in my opinion, never get discussed in NSA. One is the handling of Q&As, actually three subjects. One is the handling of Q&As, one is PowerPoint's pro and con, and the other thing is plagiarism, or the ability to not feel threatened that other people may steal your stuff. And what I need to say to the creative people in the room, they may steal our stuff, but they cannot steal you. They cannot steal your personality. They cannot steal your humor. And you must learn to separate the message from the messenger. Absolutely. And we all have to grow to embrace the fact it's going to happen. Now, the thought is that imitation is the finest form of flattery, and I am not from that school. In NSA, we call that a plagiarism because we're polite. I call it immoral, unethical, and most probably illegal. Therefore, we have a lot of creative people who are genuinely threatened by thinking somebody's going to steal their stuff. And so, in my opinion, they make some career mistakes. Now, in my profession, and I must be careful I don't mention names because I have 2 or 3 people from my profession, 2 sitting right here, and my new project manager, Diana. In the May luncheon, I said I was going to go and hire somebody who was going to control me. Diana has come on board to control me. And so when I go to large conventions, I see many of my professional speakers don't allow themselves to be taped at the big conventions. They won't sign the release because they, quote, have product. I always sign the release. I always let them tape me. I always make sure I get the 800 number and the website in that CD that they're buying. And what do? If you do a good job, they call you up and buy the rest of your stuff. It's the cheapest marketing you'll ever have. So don't be so closed with your information. Now, I had my aha moment, and I'll be sure not to use the speaker's name because they are a member of NSA. But I was at a large convention and somebody stopped me in the hall and said, you need to know there's a speaker around the corner who's pinching your stuff. I happen to know she's got the information in her car. She listens to your audio programs in her car. So I crept into the back of the room and I recognized certain of my stuff on stage. But I learned 2 very important things when I sat and watched her. Number one, she didn't speak to the audience, she spoke at the audience. Because obviously she had memorized chunks of stuff. And secondly, she took no Q&As. Well, if I was using somebody else's stuff, I wouldn't use Q&As because I would be scared you'd ask something that, gosh, hadn't been on the tape or the CD that I'd heard. So she spoke at the audience, and she didn't take Q&As. And I walked out, and to me, she had given me a gift. Now, when you speak internationally, and they're very strict in this, in Europe and in the UK, they put the Q&As at the end of the program. I've never understood it. So the energy is at a certain pace. Then they say, are there any questions? People are saying, gosh, I'm hungry. I want to go to the bathroom. Let's go home, whatever. So really the energy goes down, and you tend to finish on a low note. I walked out of watching the speaker with some of my stuff, and I thought, you know what? Completely different. I take Q&As all day. I make it very interactive. I don't stand on the stage. I stand down on the floor. And as Mary and Leslie know, if we're in a large convention, you've got 1,000 people in the room, and you are on the floor, and you're not on the stage, you're going to have a speaker be told by the host, please stand up on the stage, they can't see you in the back. And this is what I say when I get back on the stage after the break. I said, I understand some of you can't see me in the back. Well, if you got out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning like the people did in the front, you would have been in the front. I just call it the way I see it. And you know what? People love that. People can't pinch your sense of humor. They can't pinch your repartee. What you do when you take Q&As during the day, you are a walking advertisement for who you are because you problem solve on the spot. And that sorts out the men from the boys. And I wish I could find a female, saying the women from the girls doesn't sound right. But very few people can think on the spot. So let me give you a couple of suggestions for handling Q&As. Number one is obvious, but it isn't always done. Please repeat the question. But when you repeat it, edit it. Learn how to cut a long-winded person off. I have no problem saying, and the bottom line is, or your question is, you say it with a smile, the audience will thank you for it. Give the answer very specifically. I tend to give the answer first before the fill-in. The answer to your question, in my opinion, is no. These are the 3 reasons. So I give them my answer first, and then I start to back into it, giving them as much or as little as I want. You've got to learn to cut somebody off who's arguing with you. The quickest way I know to do that is say, you know what? I'll buy the bottle of wine. I'll see you in the bar at 6 o'clock tonight. You get a laugh and you diffuse it. If you've got somebody who's being aggressive and is a real pain, in a large audience with the light, you can pretend not to see them. But for those of you who are consulting with 10 people in the room, you snub 1 out of 10 and the 9 will turn on you. So those of you who think it's harder to speak to a large audience than a small audience, actually that's not true. We can get away with murder in the big audience, not so easy in the small audience. Never lie to your audience. If you don't know, I say, I don't know, but please give me a card. Great question. I'll make a phone call at lunch. I'll get you the answer this afternoon. And when you start doing Q&As, you have to be prepared for a couple of things. You have always got to come back to the place you were before you went off track. I wonder how many of us have gone back to where we thought we were and couldn't remember where we were. And you really feel stupid. Now, Jolene and I actually, and I've never heard her speak before, this is a trick I made up years ago and I use it all the time. I go to open my mouth, I've completely forgotten where I was. I say, hang on a second now, what's the exact point I last made? Everybody goes, they give me the last 2 points. I say, just testing, wanted to make sure you were listening. What am I going to do? Tell them that I forgot where I was? Never. So Q&As to me sort out the professional speaker from the amateur, which therefore leads me to think, those of you with PowerPoint, how do you handle Q&As? Well, I'm a little confused about PowerPoint. I don't get PowerPoint. I'm beginning to think that in my CV, I'm actually going to list that I don't use PowerPoint. The most fun introduction I ever had, the first time I went to Belgium, it was a very formal, dental, very high-powered private study club. I'd given him this wonderful host introduction. The Europeans like it very formal, so it made me sound absolutely wonderful. He walks out on the stage and he doesn't have a piece of paper in front of him, and I think, wow, Jan, this is really good. You've learnt my stuff by heart. He walks out and he says, good morning. We're going to spend the next 2 days with Jenny. Now, let me tell you everything you need to know about Jenny. Number one, she does not use PowerPoint. I virtually got a standing ovation. And number two, which is most probably politically incorrect, but I'll tell you what he said. He looked at the audience and he said, and she thinks that George Bush is an idiot. That was my introduction. When they learned I didn't use PowerPoint, I virtually could do nothing wrong. I don't get PowerPoint. We had an NSA national meeting a few years ago, and the then president of NSA stood up at the opening ceremonies and talked about communication and read it from the screen. I almost walked out. I don't know how you have Q&As with PowerPoint. I don't know at what point you say, hang on a second now, I've got 165 more to go, so should I take that question or should I keep going? There are speakers I meet in the hall that I don't even recognize them because I didn't see them in the dim corner while they were clicking. So I don't build a relationship with PowerPoint. And as an attendee, PowerPoint drives me crazy. I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm writing on an outline that is in like 7 point. It drives me crazy. It absolutely drives me crazy. Now, this afternoon when I do Meet the Pros, I have no agenda. My agenda is your agenda, and I'll tell you right now what I'm going to offer that you do. Please come to my table and say to yourself, if I could wave my magic wand, what is the one problem I'd like to solve? Bring it, and together we will solve it. Thank you very much.